what's the stronger feeling? The feeling of fear of failure or the feeling of disappointment because you didn't try?
Hello and welcome to The Career Flipper, a weekly podcast featuring career change stories from people around the world in a bunch of different industries about how they get from point A to point B and all the twists and turns in between. I'm Jenny Dempsey, your career flipping host. After more than a decade working in customer service and experience leadership in the tech industry, as well as teaching to Udemy training customer service courses, speaking at business conferences, and running a global customer service mentorship program, I found myself laid off in 2022 from my main corporate job. And despite all of my experience, I couldn't land a new job, and I really started to question my worth. What am I supposed to do now? Then, a friend gave me an old junky table. I saw potential. I binged YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram videos to learn how to fix it up and found joy in giving something unwanted a brand new chance at life, which really resonated with me after getting laid off and feeling unwanted myself. And this led me to start my furniture makeover and restoration business, San Diego Furniture Flipper, where I rescue and restore good furniture to keep it out of the landfill. Alongside that, I speak at events, do some consulting on the side, and offer one-on-one career change coaching sessions. Let me know if you'd like one. Despite all this wonderful stuff, I was feeling alone and honestly kind of delusional about this new path. I mean, who really goes from the corporate tech world to covered in paint and sawdust in their garage? So I started to reach out to a few people that I knew who've also done some career changes throughout their lives, and hearing their stories motivated me, and it made me realize that it's totally okay to change direction at any point in life. And I realized that there are way more people out there who flip their careers, more than I'd ever imagined. And that's why I started this podcast. It came to me in a dream to share these incredible stories and offer support to anyone considering, having already been through, or currently going through a career flip of their own. So I really hope you'll find something in each episode to help you on your path. New episodes are released every single Thursday. Now, let's get into today's episode. Have you ever wondered what it's like to swap a high-pressure corporate job for running a dive shop on a remote island? Natalie Shuman's journey takes us from the hustle world of marketing to the clear blue waters of being an owner, operator, but most of all, community builder at Sundivers Roatan in Honduras. She opens up about the pressures, recognition, and burnout from her corporate career and how she and her husband followed their dreams. In this episode, discover how taking smart risks, setting boundaries, and pursuing passion lead her to a fulfilling new life that blends diving with community and conservation. Let's dive into her story now. Hey, Natalie.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me on the Career Flipper. I'm so excited to talk with you.
It's been way too long, and I'm so excited that we're reconnecting in this way.
Yeah, it really, really has. You know, for everyone listening, Natalie and I worked together at a company years ago. I had just started working at this company. I think maybe I had only been there a few months, and it was remote. Like, we were all in different places. And I remember that day seeing that Slack message that you posted and sharing that you're taking a different journey. And I was like, I mean, this was 4 years ago now. Like, this was 2020. And I was just like, whoa, how cool, how bold. I remember separately messaging you of like, just like how amazing I thought this choice was. So,
Yeah, I always said it was either going to be seen as very brave or very crazy, all depending how it worked out. Luckily, I can say it was brave.
Yeah.
Probably still a little crazy for sure.
Only the best can say that, though. But yeah, I'm just going to let you jump into it because this is going to be such an amazing story that we can all learn from. So Natalie, tell me your career flip.
Cool. Well, I am basically a corporate dropout turned coral nerd, is what I like to say. But I think my story really starts even before my career did, because, you know, I was one of those typical overachievers with elder sister syndrome and kind of the perfect poster child for hustle culture. I was the first in my family to go to college. I graduated in 3 years and I entered corporate at barely 21. And I had just always felt this really huge sense of responsibility to honor, I'm like going to even get a little teared up here, honor my immigrant grandparents who came to the US so that, their kids could get a rung up on the ladder of life's success. And then my parents who worked really hard to put me through school. But if I'm being honest, I think I also just really thrived on the recognition I got through my professional success. And, it really became wrapped into my identity and kind of my self-worth. And so I really hustled from, a young age to really try to grow myself professionally and kind of climb that corporate ladder. And as far as my career path, I gained experience in a number of disciplines in marketing and communications. I learned very early on that I really loved taking data like consumer insights, and turning it into marketing strategies and then making those marketing strategies come to life and seeing the business results from that. Like I just really, really thrived on that. So eventually my career evolved into retail marketing, and I spent the bulk of it in fresh produce, where I was helping specialty brands work with grocery retailers so they could help consumers be aware that there was something interesting and unique in the produce department. And before the career flip, I was running international retail and trade marketing for a sustainable food technology company that was trying to combat climate change through reducing food waste. And that's where we met, luckily. Mm-hmm. And I loved the work. I loved the mission. I was very fortunate to travel around the world with my career and work with amazing people. But really, behind the scenes, I was very burnt out. I was burnt out by the travel schedule. I was burnt out by the long work days that startup companies require, and really any company these days, always being connected. And I just felt this constant, immense pressure to perform, whether that was internally or externally placed. But you need a life change when you are packing your bags to go to amazing places like Berlin or Vietnam, and you're crying as you do that. So at the same time, about 11 years ago, I met a really hot, smart guy who was also on the corporate fast track. So yes, this is also a love story. And he was a part-time scuba instructor on the side. And our conversations around that reminded me that as a kid growing up in SoCal, I had this immense love for the ocean and I was fascinated by it. So I was super stoked when he offered me scuba lessons. And we always joke that, I just thought I was getting free scuba lessons from a hot guy, and he thought he was going on a date. Seems he was right. He was right. So spoiler alert, he's my husband and my business partner. But he's actually the one that had this dream to run a dive shop on a remote island. And the more we talked about it, the idea of living internationally in a new culture, getting to live amongst nature, getting to be boots on the ground, or what I say now, fins in the water, in terms of being on the front lines of conservation. All of that appealed to me, as well as the idea of getting to be my own boss and really create a work culture that I love to be a part of and that other people would love to be a part of. So we kept talking about it, and it was always like this pillow talk thing. And then finally I was just like, why don't we just stop talking and let's start doing? So we would have these sessions that I called dream planning, which was basically meetings that we would hold over the weekend. So we would go to a little downtown eatery, or we would go to a brew pub. We were living in Denver at the time. And that's where we were doing research on locations, kind of figuring out the financial plans for this, writing the vision and the business plan for what we wanted to create. And then, of course, also doing, quote unquote, site visits, which meant dive trips in cool Caribbean locations. And around 2020, we booked a dive trip out to Roatan, Honduras. We didn't know much about it other than it was off the coast of Honduras. It was known to be really a gem in the Caribbean in terms of world-class diving. And we also didn't know when we booked this trip that COVID was about to hit. So we actually got stuck on the island because they closed the borders and we were here for about 2 weeks. And it was just enough time to really fall in love with the place. So we didn't end up buying that dive shop we were looking at originally, but another one came up for sale, and we only saw it through WhatsApp video, but it looked like the perfect little beachside dive shop. And we said yes. And over the course of 6 to 8 months or so, all the stars just kind of magically aligned. And here we are 3.5 years later or so. And I'm really proud to say that we have one of the most reputable shops in Roatan. And, it's become so much more than just a dive shop or a dive center. For me, it's become this just beautiful community hub of people from around the world who love to explore, love to adventure in the ocean, but also really want to do their part through conservation and citizen science, which is something that we promote a lot to help protect this really fragile and beautiful ecosystem that we have here.
Wow, Natalie, I'm getting like a little emotional. I feel like the dream came true. And with the timing with COVID, and it's like you said, the stars aligned, like it all just worked out in the way that it needed to. And when I remember seeing that message, I'll go back to that. I remember feeling I was just very burnt out at work, and I was working a couple jobs at that time. And I just remember thinking, gosh, how cool. And so when you started to tell people about it, my reaction was that. But what were other people, what were other people saying to you? And what was that like? Were there any naysayers? Were there any moments when you were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't? Like, was there any imposter syndrome there? What was the experience kind of like when you were telling people you were going to do this big change, or when you had to turn in your notice at work, or like, what was that like?
Oh goodness, there were all the feels for sure. I think there was a fear of failing, and I would talk about that a lot with people. But what I came back to was, at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed and you're looking back, like what's the stronger feeling? The feeling of fear of failure, or the feeling of disappointment because you didn't try? So we knew we had to do it. And the reaction was really positive, and the reaction was surprising, because when we talked about what we were going to do and this major change that we were making to chase a dream, it opened up this conversation with so many people where you found out that they had dreams too. So many people have these kind of like latent passions that they're pushing down every day because they feel like they're doing what's right by, following that really traditional career path. But yet there is something that's always in the back of their mind or in the bottom of their heart that they would love to be pursuing. So I love having the conversation. I love getting to talk to you here today, because I think it's just an opportunity to show people that, you can take that calculated risk and you can make the leap, and, the path will rise to meet you most of the time. And if it doesn't work out, what I told myself was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I've had a great career. I have an amazing network. I have a strong reputation. I can always go back to doing what I was doing before.
Right, exactly. And I like how you call it calculated risk. I think a lot of the times, career flips can be seen as very black and white. You just jump and you do it. And a lot of us are planners, we're cautious, and like the thought of like doing that is like will stop us in our tracks. But when there is more calculation behind it, more thought, more strategy, and still the dream, like not letting go of that, it does feel a little bit kind of safer to hop into it. Or when you're completely pushed into it, like I got laid up, like I never would have taken this journey had I not been laid up. And it's like a blessing in disguise. But like sometimes you just need to really like think about those steps before jumping in, and then you still do it, but you have some of the backbone there as well. But
yeah, absolutely. You de-risk it a bit, right? I mean, we had been talking about this for 4 years. And one of the things that was really valuable about that was as we were thinking about owning our own business, I was thinking about what are the skill sets that I need to have. And so, I was able to, even in the confines of my career and my position, create opportunities for me to learn certain skill sets that would be valuable for me down the road in this position. So that calculated risk is something that not only like minimizes the risk for you, but I think can also help better prepare you for what you're stepping into.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say you can never be 100% prepared, and you're not going to be able to plan for everything. Right. I'll give you an example. Actually, when we moved here and we took over the dive shop, we start training, and I'm looking at employees' schedules, and all of a sudden, it's dawning on me that people are working 6 days a week, and that's owners included. And I'm like, wait a minute. I came here to work hard for sure, but to work less, right? Yeah. To have a little bit more work-life balance. So we maintained that schedule because it's kind of the industry standard for a while. And then we just finally said, you know what, it's not working for us. And honestly, it wasn't working for people either. I could tell that, people were tired, stressed out, getting sick, that sort of thing. So we finally said, we're just going to venture out on our own, and we're going to break the mold, and we're going to change it. And so now we work 5 days a week, which to us is a standard work week. Yeah. And employees all have the choice to work 5 or 6 days. And we have some people that opt for the 6 days, but the majority of people are working the 5 days a week. And I feel really good about that because I know that they're getting a little bit more balance back in their life.
Yeah, I love that. And that's aligning with your values. And that's another risk right there. It sounds like, kind of shifting this industry culture and doing it a different way. And that's incredible. It's successful. I want to hop back to something real quick because earlier you mentioned about work and worth. And I want to touch on that for a second because this is something that I think I've been still unraveling for the last year. And a lot of people that I know are maybe in it or unraveling it as well. And, when we follow this traditional career path and we get a lot of validation around, oh, you're really good at the business stuff. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But like you mentioned, it becomes your worth. And I always thought, like, actually the day that I got laid off, I was like, wow, work is the only thing I'm good at. What am I going to do now? And then like the thought of like sitting here now thinking back to that, I'm like, oh my God, ow, like my heart hurts. Like that's not the only thing I was good at. But for years, I thought that was it. And when you mentioned that, how have you kind of unraveled that or worked through it? Or what is that journey been like for you when, there's still work. We still have to do work, but it's like a different kind, you chose it. And so I'm just curious about all of that.
Yeah, I actually think that it's still a work in progress for me, honestly. One of the most important life lessons that I learned through this transition was that even bosses have to set their own boundaries. I think I was under the impression that if I was, CEO and president, I could set my deadlines and move them however I wanted. And that, I was removing myself from this hustle culture that I think a lot of times, we're putting corporations as the villains in. And I was moving to an island where, island time is a real thing. And yet I still had that urge to put professional success over my personal needs. So, in the beginning, when it was the first year of the business, that was somewhat expected. I was learning a new business and I was really trying to wrap my brain around it. But when it got to, here we are in the second year, and actually at this time, Shannon was taking a step away from the business to pursue some other interests. So I really was kind of solo at the helm. I was realizing that I was wrapped up in that same cycle, and that wasn't good for me because that's not what we set out to do this for. And I wasn't modeling good behavior for my team. And so I needed to make a shift because it wasn't going to be sustainable for the business either for the long term or for me personally, health wise. So I went back to that dream planning model. Like, what was the vision? And this time it wasn't about, what's the business or where do we live? It was, who am I in that business? And what does my life look like? What does my life look like on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly? And when I was able to figure out kind of who I wanted to be, I recognized I had a staffing issue. We were under supported in the kind of daily operations management of the business. So we put the structure in place, and I can say that has helped immensely. And it's given me a lot of space. I think I still go through times where, on the weekends when I'm off and I am sitting on the beach reading a book, I sometimes feel guilty. And I have to remind myself that, I am employing other people. There's a value exchange. They are getting paid to do the work. And that part of me taking the time to do things that I love and enjoy and that recharge me away from the dive center is only going to make me a better leader when I'm there. So it's a continuous conversation with myself for sure.
Yeah. Ongoing progress. I hear that completely. Just learning that with the furniture flipping. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't want to work on the weekends. And honestly, it'd be great to even take Fridays off, for example. In my mind, like, it'd be amazing to do that. But then I feel the guilt come in, or I'm like, well, it's only me doing this. I need to get this done. I should be in there working on this. But it's like, I don't need to. I've structured my days where I can get things done. And so kind of like pulling myself back, having those conversations, as you mentioned, that just talking to yourself of like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing that it's so true when you mentioned like the corporations, we make them out a lot of the times to be the villain. And a lot of the times it's not. It's just it's the people. And it's what we've learned over the years. Like, gosh, before I worked at the company we worked at together, there was another company I worked at and I was working so many hours. Like, did the company actually enforce that? No, they didn't. It was me. And I was burning myself out because I thought that was going to prove my worth. And and kind of unraveling that and realizing that, and even now getting caught back in that, well, I got to do this, this, and this to show that I'm good. Wait a second.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Yeah, you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what's the common denominator here?
Yeah.
If you're moving from career position to position, different industries, different corporations, and still finding yourself in that cycle, it's like, okay, well, what's the common denominator? And yes, some of it is a bit indoctrinated, but there are ways, there are, tips and tricks to silence our phones, close the chats out, and to recognize that we're going to be all the better for it when we are working if we're taking the time to nurture ourselves, right?
Yeah. So true. So true. And I think that is, what people get caught up in, then why they don't pursue other dreams or even hobbies on the side, like taking an hour every weekend and just painting or whatever it is. Like, a lot of the times because we're like, well, we got to do this, and like, oh, I got this notification on my phone, I got to jump to this, and focusing because that is feeding into this belief that work is our worth. And if we're not doing that, then we're guilty or feeling guilty or we're, not good enough or whatever it is. And then suddenly all of these wonderful, beautiful things that bring us joy and recharge us are left on the table, and we consistently feel so stressed and tired. But if we were to just take a little bit of time, like, gosh, sometimes I even think like 5 minutes a day, like it doesn't even have to be a lot. It makes a change.
Yeah, little micro resets. I think the flip side to that is when you are doing something that you love, it does feel a lot less like work. So when we started this dive center and we really started thinking about it as, like I said, not a dive center, a community center. Yeah, and we weaved into it, our personal passion for conservation. Next week, we're going to be keeping the dive center open for 3 nights in a row. But all of that is to do coral spawning monitoring, something that is an amazing phenomenon to witness. And we're doing it in support of local conservation efforts. So yes, we're working late, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like work because we're bringing together our employees to volunteer. Some of our customers are volunteering. We're working with the marine park and we're doing something for good. And that it just doesn't feel like work. It feels fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That part, it just like lights you up, and knowing that there's so much good. I mean, that sounds amazing. I'm like, oh, I wish I could go. That sounds incredible. And it's so true. And I'm learning that like with this kind of diving into art, for example, like I think about it all the time. I want to be in there doing this and like making this magic happen with, a paintbrush. And it's just like, whoa, but it is still work. There's still sweat. I'm covered in sawdust. I got splinters, it is messy. And, there's that quote that we've all heard, like when you love what you do, you never work a day. And I'm like, I love what I do, but it does still feel, there is still work involved. Yeah. But it is a mix of like it's a different feeling. It's the kind of work that I'm like, I want to do this. This is so fun and really lights me up. And the challenges are ones that I want to take on. They're like exhilarating. I'm like, I learned something from this. Like it's messy and yeah. So it's like you said, it's a whole journey. It's ongoing. And it sounds like, making decisions along the way that align with your values, and then changing it if it doesn't work is really
exactly. Yeah. It's always an evolution, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Well, Natalie, if people want to come diving with you, they want to hear more about your story or connect with you or ask questions, gosh, like your story is just so inspiring. And I'm just so grateful for you being here today and sharing so much. And where can people find you and connect with you?
Well, thank you. It's such a great opportunity to get to pay it forward, honestly, for all the people that motivated me. And hopefully the conversation sparks some inspiration for someone else. But if folks want to get some virtual vitamin C and check out all the cool stuff that we're seeing under the waves here, you can find Sundivers Roatan on Instagram and Facebook. We also have a guide to the most epic diving in Roatan on our website at sundiversroatan.com.
Amazing. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you so much, Natalie. This was wonderful. You're an absolute burst of sunshine, and I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure. I'm so glad to get to see you again. And I hope next time maybe we're sipping some cocktails with umbrellas in them on the beach.
I love this idea. I've never been scuba diving, so I'm in.
All right. Well, there's no better time to start.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Career Flipper. Be sure to connect with Natalie using the links in the show notes. I hope you get to go scuba diving with her. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend who could use some inspiration. Please rate and review the show and hit that subscribe button for more flippin' stories like Natalie's every Thursday. Your support helps me reach more career flippers and future flippers to be, spreading the love, support, and motivation we all need on this journey. And if you ever need a career flipping speaker for your event, want to sponsor the podcast, or just want to say hi and share your story, I hope you'll pop over to thecareerflipper.com. I'd love to hear from you. Keep on your path, my friend. What's the best that could happen? Talk to you next week.